Oh god, we're back here again. Well, I suppose everyone realized that this was inevitable. Two of my most notorious videos are calling Gundam SEED and Gundam SEED Destiny absolute failures, and fans of that particular Gundam universe are still sore about it to this day. It goes to show how the general IQ of a Gundam SEED fan is in the double digits, because they can't parse the idea that fiscal success and creative success are two completely different things. Oh, shoot. I just realized I used some three-syllable words there. Let me dumb it down so the SEED fans can understand. Just because something make money does not mean it good. Do you understand? McDonald's hamburgers make lots of money, but they're not good hamburgers. In the past, I mentioned Metallica's Saint Anger album was a fiscal success, 5 times platinum, but it's a creative failure because the album is not actually good. Another good example would be the Twilight films, which oddly enough are relevant to today's topic. The Twilight films are movies that are aimed at teenage girls, and they are absolutely cringeworthy. Women today that were fans of those movies back then, those girls will freely admit that Twilight is cringe as fuck. Gundam SEED Freedom is pretty much the same thing. Let me go ahead and break down the plot for you. I'm going to tell you all right now that I'm going to spoil the ever-loving crap out of this movie because I don't want anyone to watch it unless you really want something to laugh at. So, if you actually want to go ahead and watch something really stupid, go ahead and watch it and come back. But anyway, I'll say right out of the gate that the stupidity of this movie is incredibly entertaining, but you're laughing at the movie, not enjoying it for what it is. This movie is like having Macbeth performed by Carrot Top in clown makeup, and the stage director and Carrot Top expect you to take him seriously. It's beyond hilarious that this movie expects the people who watch it to look at it seriously as a piece of art instead of just a parody of what Mobile Suit Gundam is supposed to be. Here's the basic idea of what Gundam SEED Freedom is. A bunch of clones who stole their ideology from the villain of the last show, and from Adolf Hitler, because Gundam SEED only knows how to do Hitler, have a Death Star, and they plan on neutralizing Kira Yamato through the usage of NTR. Yeah, the grand strategy of the enemy plot is space lasers and cuckoldry. You see, the bad guys in this are also ultimate coordinators like Lacus Clyne and Kira Yamato. So their strategy is for the whole universe to come under the rule of their Super Hitler Destiny plan, and it's up to our heroes to stop them. Also, they actually reveal in this that Lacus is an ultimate coordinator, so now they're finally admitting that, like they admitted in the first seed that Kira is basically a Gary Stu, they're flat out admitting that Lacus Clyne is a Mary Sue. Sorry to say, but you're a bit late. We figured that out, 2 decades ago. Now let me say some positive notes. This is the very first Gundam SEED project that I have seen where I actually liked most of the mobile suits that I saw. I feel like they fixed a lot of the problems from the 2 previous series. With only one side having access to Gundam mobile suits, the complaints I had with SEED Destiny have gone out the window in regards to how easy it is to tell who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. Not to mention, there's a lot of mobile suits here that don't do the whole strap a jet to its back thing. And thank fuck, it's basically like what I said in my Rate the Mecha things. Just make the backpacks look like the stealth gal from Gao Gaigar. Simple and easy. And they did it! So, good on them. Though I will admit that the Zagok in this looks fucking silly. They put a Wii on its head because Atheron's piloting it. Oh god. Still, it's a better way to get more use out of an aquatic killing machine after you screwed up a land war. Looking at you, Girin Zabi, you dumb fuck. The other thing that I will mention is that, though the opening of the movie is really dumb, the fight scenes at the end of it are the most watchable fight scenes that Gundam SEED has ever had. It's not just a bunch of senseless beam spam. There's a constant shifting from long-range to close-range combat, and makes for very appealing-looking fights, because you'll have a moment where you're engaging in a sword fight, but then suddenly the pilot has to back off because there's bits everywhere and things like that. It's very much more reminiscent of fights that would go on around the time of Zeta, Double Zeta, and Char's counterattack. And I like that sort of stuff. So, good on them. The unfortunate thing is that the CGI kind of looks like garbage. Gundam Unicorn had better looking computer-generated animation, and that was 14 years ago. Largely because they're trying to stylize it with a style of cell shading to try to make it look more like it's hand animated, and it actually makes it look worse. Not to mention, the Akatsuki has always looked really gaudy and disgusting looking, and it looks even worse in this movie. Really, really bad idea. Now, the hand-drawn stuff looks pretty appealing, though. And I really wish they had done more of that, or just do the whole movie with that kind of animation. But I suppose it's a little too much to ask in the year of our Lord 2024. The rest of the movie is terrible, though. But the great thing about it is that it's the type of terrible that's really fun to watch, because something about it is so silly that you hardly believe that it's real. It's like watching two clown cars run into each other at 100 miles an hour. It is unbridled silliness, and it's honestly hard to believe that a serious person sat down and wrote this story and thought that this was awesome. If the writer wrote this as a gag, thinking that this was hilarious, then God bless her soul wherever she is in the afterlife. But I don't think that was the case here. So let's go ahead and break down the little details. So at the start of the story, Blue Cosmos is still around and is being ran by a guy whose name is, I kid you not, Mike. Well, Michael, but you know everybody around him is calling him Mike. It's funny to think that Blue Cosmos, which was previously run by Lipstick Hitler, is now being ran by a guy named Mike, who, when you actually see him, is one of the most plain Mike-looking guys that you're ever going to see. I genuinely think that they ran out of people to lead them, so they just grabbed the 50-year-old janitor with 2 kids and some very suspect Twitter posts. At this point, Kira leads a team that goes down to Earth to solve conflicts by saying that people shouldn't be fighting and then solving the problem with fighting. So yes, Kira is still a hypocrite. He has the Tri-Stars with him, you know, the Wish version, and I will admit that the Eye Patch Lady actually gets a cool couple of moments, and they give her a big ass, so those are positives. The problem we run into at the start of this, though, is that Kira is going through some sort of weird existential crisis about blood being on his hands, even though he goes out of his way to spare as many lives as humanly possible, and he's been doing that for a while. It's really silly because it's not like Kira has a kill count that's comparable to a Gundam wing pilot or something. Regardless, aside from the Tri-Stars, we also have Shin returning from Destiny to effectively be Worf in this, alongside his lady Luna Maria Hawk, and then another chick that might as well have the words traitorous prostitute tattooed on her fucking forehead. Her name is Agnes, and she sucks. She is written terribly, and you could tell the instant you see her and hear her speak that she's going to be the one who betrays the group. She might as well be spotted in her dorm room praying to Benedict Arnold and Judas Iscariot. And she does it because nobody wants to stick their dick in her. I wish it wasn't that simple, but it really is. Like I said, when it comes to melodrama and stuff like that, there's some comparisons to Twilight that are very apt, alongside other certain fiction that is not aimed at, you know, Gundam fans. Either way, Kira having an existential crisis over things doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because up to this point, the plot of Gundam SEED has just flat out assumed that everything that Kira wants is morally good because he's Kira. If this was a character that actually had a concise moral code that you could talk about that was consistent in any way, shape, or form, then a plot like this would make a lot more sense. I would know, because Gundam has done it before, with Hiro Yui in Endless Waltz. You know, when he drops that line of how many times he has to kill that little girl, it hits like a fucking brick to the side of the skull, because Hiro is a character that has an arc. Kira has largely been the same person since this whole thing started, because he's a Gary Stu. I'm not going to go into a long rant about him being a Gary Stu. I've done 2 videos where there's actually full sections about why he's a Gary Stu. So just go back and watch those. Link will be in the description. My overall point is that this type of a subplot or thought process doesn't really make sense because the writers never set this sort of thing up properly. And when you try to do it now, it just makes it look like you're telling your audience that your writing sucks. As for Lacus Clyne, she's having visions of some random blonde guy all of a sudden and having doubts about Kira for reasons that don't really make a whole lot of sense. Because there's a lot of things in this that don't make a whole lot of sense. After this is all said and done, they go to the nation of the obvious bad guys. I mean, they're so obvious that one of them is even wearing a fucking Bane mask.
Of course.
This is not good storytelling either. Especially considering that you effectively have people mind-controlling other people with new type powers. In a universe that does not have new types. There's no explanation as to why they can do this either. They just throw it in. Either way, the blonde guy, who is basically the bad guy and is basically Hitler, who has a mom who is a midget that is also Hitler, tries to seduce Lacus and actually succeeds. And effectively, there's a whole situation where Kira and Lacus are in situations where they could turn each other into cuckolds. And in my absolute shock, Kira is the one with the moral fiber to deny the chick who offers up her snatch to him. So in a way, we finally got a little bit of character development with this guy. This is the first time Kira Yamato has ever turned down a free vagina. Then there's an entire cluster screw of a big fight where the good guys lose because, you know, it's that time of the plot where the good guys are supposed to lose. And because Kira gets mind controlled somehow, again, all these new type abilities are quite literally random, into aggressively chasing Micah. And somehow this creates an international incident where nuclear missiles end up getting launched. Because that's how you respond to somebody possibly crossing the border, trying to stop a bad guy that everybody wants caught. Again, the writing is really bad here. Anyway, Lacus agrees at this point that it's okay to shoot Kira down for doing his job when he might cross a border. And she's more upset with him almost crossing a border and making somebody angry, even though both nations in this particular case wanted to bring Mike and Blue Cosmos down, then she was upset about the fact that 50,000 people quite literally get nuked, murdered in nuclear fire, and according to a news report we see later, with over 100,000 more injured. So border crossing is worse than people getting nuked? What the fuck? Ugh. Again, the writing's terrible. Regardless, this is the moment where Athra and Zala saves everybody, because that's what Athra and Zala do. And they all have their come-to-Jesus moment that leaves them with the conclusion that they need to go save Lacus, because apparently the entire plot of this damn show and this entire series relies on this one woman, because she's a Mary Sue. There's even a point with Lacus where they give her a pilot suit that is supposed to look kind of angelic. I mean, it has feathers, to the point where it almost seems like something in a Battle of the Planets. The funny part is they make her tits extra jiggly, and they give her a backside that would make Iggy Azalea jealous, because it doesn't look like Lacus needed surgery for it. So essentially what we're doing at this point is hitching the entire fate of the world on a big booty hoe. I wish I was making this up. They even have a point where she gets into part of a mobile suit, and I'm pretty sure that she's piloting this damn thing like they pilot the mechs in Darling in the Franxx, or at least close to it, which brings about the meme that female pilots have a tendency to be leaning forward with their ass in the air, whereas men just sit back. It's a really, really weird thing that anime does. Now, I will admit, even as somebody that doesn't like Lacus Clyne, the view is nice, so I'll give them that, but still, it's a really weird meme. Regardless, after the midway point, as I mentioned earlier, the action does ramp up, and it's not bad. The fight scenes are pretty well put together, and a bunch of people get into their classic mobile suits that we saw from the beginning of the show, or at least some variation of them, to go kick the crap out of people. And if you're a Gundam SEED fan, you're really going to like that. The thing is, all the actual serious moments in the melodrama are so poorly written and poorly thought out that it's more funny than anything. The end battle is basically the good guy fleet goes up against the bad guy fleet and the Death Star, because that's all Gundam SEED really ends up being. Go fight Hitler at the Death Star, which probably should have been the plot to the third Wolfenstein game after New Colossus, but we had to get Youngblood instead. Fuck you, Machine Games. Anyway, the whole thing gets goofy because the blonde guy that Lacus was falling in love with 5 minutes earlier suddenly doesn't love the guy out of nowhere. I kid you not, she does a 180-degree turn after she had a moment where it seemed like she was more caring and insulted by the idea of border crossings than multiple deaths. And now she's all in love with Kira again because she realized that, lo and behold, the obvious bad guys who look like obvious bad guys were bad guys. Go figure. Quick pause. Audio editing Micah here with a quick anecdote. You probably noticed earlier that I mentioned the fact that I applauded the fact that in a mobile suit fight, you could tell the difference of who the bad guys and the good guys were because one side has Gundams and the other one doesn't. And now I'm saying that it's bad to have the obvious bad guys. There's a reason for that. It's good to have obvious good guys and bad guys on screen in a mobile suit fight because you can tell where the action is and you're not going to be confused by the action whatsoever. It's the same sort of an idea of having two teams with separate types of uniforms. You don't want the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers to look alike. The fact of the matter is that whenever you're trying to tell a story, you don't want your bad guys to necessarily be the obvious ones if you're trying to set it up that the people that you're interacting with might have peaceful intentions right out of the gate, which is why it's a bad idea for your introduction of the bad guys to literally have a person with a fucking Bane mask. Okay, Audio editing Micah is done ranting. Thank you. Also, I need to mention how funny the Death Star laser is here. Have you ever watched a Looney Tunes cartoon where somebody has Acme Dynamite blow up in their face? That's sort of the look when they're covered in soot. You know, you only see their eyes and they blink once or twice for comedic effect. When this Death Star hits people in this show, that's what they look like. There is a moment where you're supposed to be shocked when it happens, especially because the first kill is a little girl, but the effect looks so fucking comical that you end up busting up laughing. I don't know what the director of this film was thinking, but if they think that they were brilliant or something, they must be the Tommy Wiseau of anime directors.
You're scaring me.
You are lying. I never hit you. You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Granted, this guy directed Crossand, so maybe he is. And yes, I'm going to be reviewing that one at some point. The movie even tries to have a domestic violence and sexual assault moment. Blondie bad guy, whose name I don't care to remember, actually tries to go full Griffith mode and rape Lacus. I say tries because the furthest he goes is to unveil some cleavage. You're not going to get any redo of Healer stuff here. Sorry, guys. For you weirdos. Get some help. Redo of Healer sucks. By the way, most women in a situation like that, after it's all over, would curl up in the fetal position afterwards and cry. Which, by the way, would have been a good point to show that Lacus Clyne actually has some vulnerabilities to her. But no, we have to have the Mary Sue basically almost completely no-sell it. Our big booty hoe basically only shedding a quarter of a tear, and then the movie wants you to pretend that it didn't happen. Quite literally, it just never gets brought up again. By the way, the ending of the film can be summed up with a Huey Lewis song. Do you like Huey Lewis in the news, Kira?
Canadians are weird!
Yup, it's the power of love. I'm not kidding about that either. An actual Mobile Suit Gundam movie has a theme about the power of love where one of the final fight scenes literally takes place while a love song is playing in the background. Also, shoutouts to Shin and Atherin for defeating their psychic opponents by either summoning a naked version of Kira's sister, an evil version of the exact same Vision,
Run! She's a ghost and a bitch!
or just going no thoughts head empty mode to beat your opponents. Again, this is a movie that wants you to take it seriously, and that's why it's hilarious. There's even a whole section where Big Booty Ho, Lacus, and Kira try to convince the big bad that somebody actually does love him somewhere, not 20 minutes after he tried to rape somebody. I kid you not. And even after saying that, they still kill the motherfucker! Oh, somebody must really love you out there. Just not us, though. Time to sever you from your mortal coil. It's such a silly ending that I couldn't help but laugh my way through it. It was at this point that something finally clicked in my brain about what Gundam Seed really is and who it's aimed at. It explains why Gundam Seed fans are such sensitive little babies about any sort of criticism that comes toward this timeline. It reminds me of when I would make fun of certain really bad romantic movies when I was a teenager. Gundam Seed fans are teenage girls. Or at least people that have the palate of teenage girls, or got into Gundam Seed when they were teenagers, and still have the palate of teenage girls. This is not a story that is meant for people who are fans of Mobile Suit Gundam. Those of us who enjoy the Universal Century, or basically any of the other timelines. Well, I can't say much for age, I haven't watched it yet, but you get my meaning. This is not a story for people that like science fiction stories about war that take itself seriously and try to tell complicated stories about humanity and its struggles with violence and murder and war. This is a show for people who like Twilight. This is the Twilight of Mecha. If you're thinking of a more anime-oriented comparison, this is a show for people who like Naruto. You know, mostly teenage girls, though some boys. This is a show for people who like Fairy Tail, mostly teenage girls, but also some boys. This is a show for people who like Inuyasha, teenage girls. This is for girls who flick their bean to NTR plots, while arguing whether or not they're Team Jacob or Team the other guy who I don't remember because I'm not a teenage girl. The positive thing about all of this is that this particular movie at least is entertaining for how dumb it is. It's one of those movies that I would recommend for groups of friends that like to get together and watch something that's so bad it's good and riff it like they're, you know, basically the cast of Mystery Science Theater 3000. But the movie is definitely the drizzling shits. Now, there is one final thing I need to do before we get away from Gundam SEED forever. Hey, Kira! Try getting a reservation at Dorsia now, you fucking stupid bastard! You fucking bastard! Ugh. Okay, I feel much better now, and never have to review anything about Gundam SEED ever again. God fucking damn it.